Welcome, dear listeners, to History with Herodotus, where we embark on a journey through the sands of time to unravel the mysteries of our collective past. Today, we find ourselves in the scorching deserts of the Middle East, where the winds of conflict have shaped the course of human history. Our topic for today's episode is Operation Desert Shield, a pivotal moment in modern history that showcased the complexities of international relations, military strategy, and the eternal quest for peace. The year was 1990, and the world was witnessing a significant shift in the global balance of power. The Soviet Union, once a formidable force, was beginning to unravel, while the United States was asserting its dominance on the world stage. In the midst of this geopolitical upheaval, a crisis was brewing in the Persian Gulf, where the oil-rich nation of Kuwait had been invaded by its powerful neighbor, Iraq. On August 2, 1990, Iraqi forces, led by the enigmatic and ruthless Saddam Hussein, crossed the border into Kuwait, sparking an international outcry. The United Nations Security Council swiftly condemned the invasion, and a flurry of diplomatic efforts ensued to persuade Iraq to withdraw its troops. However, as the days passed, it became clear that Saddam Hussein was resolute in his pursuit of territorial expansion. As the situation on the ground continued to escalate, the international community began to mobilize in response. On August 6, 1990, U.S. Secretary of State James Baker and Soviet Foreign Minister Eduard Shevardnadze issued a joint statement condemning Iraq's actions and calling for an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council. This marked a significant moment in the crisis, as it signified a rare instance of cooperation between the United States and the Soviet Union during the waning days of the Cold War. Meanwhile, in the scorching deserts of Saudi Arabia, a different kind of mobilization was underway. The Saudi government, fearing that Iraq's aggression might not stop at Kuwait's borders, began to prepare for a potential invasion. King Fahd bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, the ruler of Saudi Arabia, reached out to his allies in the United States and other Western nations, seeking military assistance to bolster his country's defenses. It was against this backdrop that Operation Desert Shield began to take shape. On August 7, 1990, U.S. Defense Secretary Dick Cheney and General Colin Powell, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, met with Saudi leaders to discuss the deployment of U.S. troops to the kingdom. This meeting marked a crucial turning point in the crisis, as it laid the groundwork for the massive military buildup that would soon follow. As the days passed, the situation on the ground continued to escalate. Iraqi forces consolidated their control over Kuwait, and the international community began to mobilize in response. On August 8, 1990, President George H.W. Bush announced that he would be deploying U.S. troops to Saudi Arabia in what would become known as Operation Desert Shield. The operation's primary objective was to deter Iraqi aggression and protect the kingdom from potential attack. The deployment of U.S. troops to Saudi Arabia marked a significant turning point in the crisis. It signaled a strong commitment by the United States to defend its allies in the region and demonstrated a willingness to use military force to counter Iraqi aggression. As the troops began to arrive, they were met with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension from the local population. The presence of foreign soldiers on Saudi soil was a rare occurrence, and many wondered what the consequences would be. The air was thick with tension, as the world held its breath in anticipation of what might come next. The fate of Kuwait, the stability of the region, and the future of international relations all hung in the balance. As we prepare to embark on the next stage of our journey, we find ourselves poised on the cusp of a dramatic and pivotal moment in modern history. As the days passed, the military buildup continued to escalate. On August 12, 1990, the U.S. Navy's aircraft carrier USS Dwight D. Eisenhower arrived in the Persian Gulf, accompanied by a battleship, several cruisers, and destroyers. This formidable naval presence served as a powerful deterrent to Iraqi forces, demonstrating the United States' commitment to defending its allies in the region. Meanwhile, on the ground, U.S. troops were busy establishing a defensive perimeter around key Saudi cities, including Dhahran and Riyadh. The deployment of Patriot missile batteries and other air defense systems helped to bolster the kingdom's defenses, providing a crucial layer of protection against potential Iraqi airstrikes. As the international community continued to mobilize in response to the crisis, a coalition of nations began to take shape. On August 25, 1990, the United Nations Security Council passed Resolution 665, which authorized a naval blockade of Iraq to enforce economic sanctions. This marked a significant escalation of the conflict, as it demonstrated the international community's willingness to use economic coercion to pressure Saddam Hussein into withdrawing his forces from Kuwait. The military buildup continued throughout September and October 1990, with troops and equipment pouring into Saudi Arabia from around the world. The coalition force, which would eventually comprise soldiers from over 30 countries, began to take shape under the leadership of General Norman Schwarzkopf Jr., a seasoned commander with extensive experience in the Middle East. As the days turned into weeks, the situation on the ground remained tense. Iraqi forces continued to consolidate their control over Kuwait, while the coalition force prepared for a potential showdown. The air was thick with anticipation, as the world held its breath in anticipation of what might come next. One of the most significant challenges facing the coalition force was the harsh desert environment. Temperatures often soared above 120 degrees Fahrenheit, while sandstorms and dust devils made it difficult for troops to navigate the terrain. Despite these challenges, the soldiers persevered, using their training and ingenuity to adapt to the unforgiving conditions. As we explore this critical period in Operation Desert Shield, it's essential to remember the human dimension of the conflict. Thousands of soldiers, sailors, and airmen were deployed to the region, leaving behind families and loved ones. The stress and uncertainty of the situation took a toll on these individuals, who were forced to endure long hours, extreme temperatures, and the ever-present threat of violence. Despite these challenges, the coalition force remained resolute in its determination to liberate Kuwait and protect Saudi Arabia. As we prepare to embark on the next stage of our journey, we find ourselves poised on the cusp of a dramatic and pivotal moment in modern history. The fate of nations hangs in the balance, and the course of human events is about to be forever altered. As the months passed, the situation on the ground continued to evolve. On November 8, 1990, President George H.W. Bush announced that he would be deploying an additional 200,000 troops to the region, bringing the total number of American soldiers in Saudi Arabia to over 400,000. This significant escalation of forces sent a clear message to Saddam Hussein. The United States and its allies were committed to liberating Kuwait and defending Saudi Arabia, no matter the cost. The coalition force, led by General Norman Schwarzkopf Jr., continued to prepare for a potential ground war. In December 1990, the United Nations Security Council passed Resolution 678, which set a deadline of January 15, 1991 for Iraq to withdraw its forces from Kuwait. As the deadline drew near, tensions in the region reached a fever pitch. On January 12, 1991, the United States Congress authorized the use of military force against Iraq, with the Senate voting 52-47 in favor of the resolution and the House of Representatives voting 250-018-3 here. This marked a significant turning point in the crisis, as it gave President Bush the authority to launch a ground war against Iraq. As the clock struck midnight on January 15, 1991, the deadline for Iraqi withdrawal from Kuwait had expired. The coalition force was poised to strike, with thousands of troops, tanks, and aircraft at the ready. The air campaign, known as Operation Desert Storm, began on January 17, 1991, with a barrage of cruise missiles and bombing raids against key Iraqi targets. The ground war, which commenced on February 24, 1991, was marked by intense fighting and significant casualties on both sides. However, the coalition forces' superior training, equipment, and tactics ultimately proved decisive, and Iraqi forces were quickly pushed out of Kuwait. On February 28, 1991, President Bush announced a ceasefire, bringing an end to the Gulf War. In the aftermath of the conflict, the international community came together to rebuild Kuwait and provide humanitarian aid to those affected by the war. The Gulf War marked a significant turning point in modern history, as it demonstrated the effectiveness of coalition warfare and the importance of international cooperation in resolving conflicts. Thousands of soldiers, sailors, and airmen were deployed to the region, with many making the ultimate sacrifice. The war also had a profound impact on the people of Kuwait, who suffered greatly under Iraqi occupation. In the words of General Norman Schwarzkopf Jr., the Gulf War was a defining moment in modern history, a testament to the bravery and determination of the men and women who served in the coalition force. That's all for today's History with Herodotus. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, remember that to understand the present, we must first understand the past.